Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Poor Things starring Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, Willem Dafoe. Going into this movie, I just wanted to watch something weird. And that is exactly what I got while watching Poor Things. I would say even weirder than I expected, because if you just watch the trailer alone, you really don't know what to expect from this movie. They don't reveal a whole lot about the plot, which I ended up enjoying. So in this review, I also don't want to tell you every single thing that happens in the movie, because I think this is one of the films that you really enjoy more not knowing a whole lot about going into it, and I love those type of films. So if you end up thinking this movie might be for you, I still want you to enjoy all those elements like I did. There are some warnings I have to give because of some of the subject matter, and I'll get into just the plot points they discuss in the trailer and maybe the overarching themes of what this movie is supposed to leave you with. But all the details that come out throughout this movie and the journey that you go on is quite interesting. So I can see why they didn't reveal a whole lot in the trailer. Also, given the fact that this movie ended up being a lot more R-rated than I was expecting. Even in the trailer, you get a little glimpse of some of the R-rated stuff. I didn't know that that was going to be a major plot point in this entire movie. So what this movie is about, you have Emma Stone's character who was brought back to life by this really weird scientist played by Willem Dafoe. And in the trailer, you hear him talk about her not really being all there, but she is rapidly getting smarter and becoming more like a normal human. But she gets sick of living at home with him and feeling trapped, that she decides to run away with a lawyer played by Mark Ruffalo, who is a great character in this movie. And it's all the adventures they go on together and really just her journey on trying to be liberated and, win her independence back. So I want to get into first the look of this movie, which was probably my favorite thing next to the acting. This movie looks like you were to go inside my brain and rip apart one of my dreams that I had. That is what I loved about this movie. It not only felt like, but also looked like nothing I had ever seen before. And that's what made this movie so enticing to watch, because throughout the entire movie, Emma Stone's character is traveling to different cities, to different countries, and each one has this own unique palette that makes the entire movie just so interesting to watch. But you also have a lot of great cinematography and the use of this fisheye lens that has this really great effect when they're pushing in on characters and having this really kind of skewed look. It really kind of attributes to the entire weirdness of this movie, going back to Willem Dafoe as a scientist, and creates all these weird hybrid animals. Pair that with the look of this lens, it just looks incredible. It goes back and forth between black and white, which gives it a really old school, almost monster movie type vibe, to a really bright and vivid color palette, which I love. And the blues in this movie are so blue that I just want to dive into them, sleep in them, wrap myself in them. Like, the color palette on this movie is everything that I look for. And then you pair it with Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo, who have great, outstanding chemistry in this movie. Both just incredible actors. Emma Stone proves why she has won an Academy Award. Mark Ruffalo proves that he is not just the Incredible Hulk. I was just watching Zodiac with Mark Ruffalo, and I was just reminded of all the different types of characters that he can play. And in this one, and really all the actors in this movie who are flexing this stage actor type quality to their characters, because this movie very much plays out like a play, but in a good way. Like, all of the scenes and all of the dialogue has a very fluid vibe to it that feels like it was so well rehearsed and all just happened in one take, even though probably not the case whatsoever. But it had that off-Broadway vibe to me, which also made me enjoy it even more. So Emma Stone crushed it, Mark Ruffalo was great, but Willem Dafoe is a modern marvel. He can do it all, who has also dipped his toes in the MCU playing the Green Goblin. He just does weird so well and has these really just big facial expressions that have been the key to him as an actor. But I feel like this is a role that he was just made to play, of this really weird scientist and doing all of these crazy things and looking just completely almost unrecognizable. But he has a voice that just, above all things, you could take away his mannerisms. His voice alone is just so great. I wish he did more voice acting. And talking about the weirdness, this leads me to the biggest warning I have to give about Poor Things, because I know some people feel different about sexual things in a movie, and I, for one, don't have an issue with it. But even I found myself thinking, why are they putting all of these sex scenes in this movie? And I don't want to reveal too much about the plot, but in the description, it says that Emma Stone's character is trying to be liberated. And a lot of the plot points have to do with her expressing herself sexually and finding things out about her body, even very early on when she's still in this weird developmental stage, but also later when she runs away with the lawyer and then gets a job later, that there is a lot of sex in this movie. So even me, where I feel comfortable with it, I had to question why the director decided to put so much of it in this movie, and also just Emma Stone, who would agree to do a movie like this. I feel like there had to be a very specific reason. And by the end of the movie, I do think I found it. Now, when put into a movie correctly, it has an effect that leads on to a big message. Earlier this year, I was given the assignment of watching a movie called Showgirls from the 90s that just had a bunch of nudity and hooking up, but there was no real reason for it. It was just there for the sake of making an NC-17 movie. But in Poor Things, it had a reason to it, and it had to do with the development of Emma Stone's character of becoming this liberated person. So I think it had a bit of a shock value, but it very much showed a purpose, and it very much showed how her character was reacting to being suppressed her entire life. And the movie ended up having this message of equality and liberation, and it really kind of had to put that in there to get that point across. So all of the hooking up in this movie does serve a purpose, but warning, there is a lot of it. If there's a case where you see it in the trailer, it's probably a pretty good indication that the rest of the movie is going to have a lot of it. So I'm quite honestly surprised that it only has an R rating. I guess due to the fact that it was mostly done more comedic and to serve a purpose and also for shock value. It didn't really feel like they were putting it in for the sake of it being risky or for the sake of it being scandalous. So this is a movie I went into with pretty high expectations, giving the director, giving the cast, and just giving the initial reaction from the trailer. And it's also one I didn't research a whole lot going into it because, like I said, I felt like it was one and was proven right that I didn't want to know a whole lot about going into it. And hopefully I didn't reveal too much about the plot in this review. I like to keep it spoiler free here. I like to keep that element of surprise. And I really ended up enjoying this movie. The visuals, the acting, how the score alone gave this movie its own identity. And I really think that this movie will go on to be nominated for a lot of Oscars. I think Emma Stone will probably be looking at another nomination for Best Actress. I don't think she'll win that award because this Oscar season is going to be pretty heavy going on. And given the subject matter here, I don't think there was enough to qualify her for another win, but she'll definitely be nominated. And the movie didn't disappoint as being one of the weirdest movies I've seen all year. So for Poor Things, I give it 4 out of 5 science experiments.